All right, in this lecture, we are going to be learning about models, and models are very connected with our database. So we're also going to be diving into databases as well. So let's go ahead and talk through our project a little bit. If we go ahead and go open up our sketch file, right, like on the home page here, we want to have all the previous jobs or projects that we have worked on before, right? And that was the whole purpose of creating this jobs app, is because it was going to show, hey, these are the jobs that you have worked on before. So how are we going to save that information? Well, we could just put on the website, like in our HTML file, add an image and say this was the job, blah, blah, blah. On the next one, do the same. And, anytime we have a new job, we could go sort of manually go back to that HTML file and edit it, but it's really not the greatest way because, then you have to dive directly into the HTML every time you want to make a change. If we decide a different way to lay these out, we're going to have to change every single box the way that it's laid out. It can get really messy, but instead, if we make a job model, which we will save into our database, whenever we, have a new job that we want to add to our website, boom, we just go into the database, say that, this is the description I want for this job, this is the picture that should be there, and that's it. And people can, all of a sudden it's going to show up on the website. If you ever need to make a quick change, you just have to quickly go to the database. And so what we're going to do in this lecture is we're going to make a model for a job, and then we're going to show how we can get that connected with a database. So let's go ahead and go into our job directory. Well, jobs with an S. This is going to come really important really soon. And let's go to this models.py. So anytime you want to make a model in your app, you have to go to that app folder and then go to the models.py. And you can have multiple models there if you want to, but typically, usually you have, it seems about one model per app, and it's usually going to take the name of what it is that you're trying to do. So for example, when we go to our blog and edit its models.py, we're going to have a blog object. But in this case, when we're working with jobs, we are going to have a job model that we're trying to create. So you might be wondering, well, what are the things ultimately that we're trying to create? We're trying to create a class here. And so let's go ahead and just clear out this space. And we want to make a new Python class. So we're going to say class, capital job, and in parentheses here, we have to pass in something from this models import. So we're going to say lowercase models dot capital model, and then we're going to do a colon like this. So you might be wondering, well, what's this whole models.model thing about? Essentially, this allows us to create this new class here in Python that's called job, but it gives us all sorts of background stuff that allows this object to be saved inside of the database. You can't just magically make a Python object and say, boom, go save yourself in the database. No, there's a little bit of nuance here, but Django does a great job of handling this. And the awesome thing about Django is there's lots of different databases out there. Like the one that's used by default is this db.sqlite3, but there's things like Postgres, MySQL. You can get into like the Windows SQL stuff, and the great thing about Django is it makes it so that you can choose almost any sort of database that you want, but here in the code, it's going to look exactly the same. Now, you can't just all the time willy-nilly be moving from database to database. There's some kind of nuances between the different databases, but for the most part, you can just sort of transition those if you need to. So with all that said, how do we add some attributes, some properties to this class, right? Because, we've got this job, but what is it that really makes up a job? Let's go ahead and look back at our sketch here. So the first and most kind of prominent one is that there should be an image with a job, right? We want to show someone who's coming to this website what it is that we worked on. So to make a new property, you just simply type the name like image, just like that, and you have to set it equal to, and this is where things get a little bit tricky here. We've got to say models dot, remember this is code that's imported from Django, models dot capital image, capital field, and then inside of there, this is where you can pass in some extra information. But the only one that we want to pass into here is we're going to say lowercase upload underscore 2. And then we're going to set a place where we would like to save this information. So for the time, we're just going to leave this blank. But you might be wondering, well, how can I know what fields I can have for this particular model? Well, that's where the Django documentation comes in great. Let's go ahead and do a Google search for Django model fields. and I'm sure that's gonna take us right to where we want to go. Django model field reference, and look at this. This has got everything that we need here. So if we kind of scroll back past this for a little bit, we can see the different things coming through here, and this is it, field types. So these are kind of some more complex one, but a Boolean field, if your object needs a Boolean. Char field, anytime you're going to be working with text. A date field for time. Oh, date time field, there's going to be some nuances between those two. Decimal field, let's go down and let's find the image field that we're working with. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, here we go, image field. Now, image field inherits from file field as it specifies here, so you might want to go see the file field. But for example, like look, that uploaded to, that's what we specified here. And there's other things that we can specify, like you can say the height and width of this image should be this, or like the max length needs to be this. All sorts of things that you can specify, even more if you go check out that filed field. But if you're wondering, you know, how do I know to go type here inside of Atom, like image is equal to models.image field uploaded to? Well, it's just in the documentation. Again, not something that you should have memorized. I've got my notes here with me so I can remember this, but if you want to know and learn more, documentation here for Django is great. Okay, so let's get back here. That's one thing that we need to cover is the image, right? But there's still one piece missing for a job. We should have some sort of little description about what it is that's going on. I like to refer to this as the summary. So I'm going to add another variable here. I'm going to say summary is equal to lowercase models dot char field. And then in parentheses, this is not required, but I do want to specify it here because I think it's going to help our website. I want to send a max length that this summary could be. So if we do max underscore length equal to, and then we specify some number. And so I might say like 200 here. And the reason for this is, you know, we kind of want to put some sort of cap on what's going on here. Like we don't want one of these boxes to randomly just be like really big and longer than the others, right? Like we should have some sort of uniform amount of text that should be going inside of here. So what's special about 200? Nothing. It's just kind of an arbitrary number that I've decided on. Now let's go back to this image field that we have where we said uploaded to blank. This is saying whenever somebody uploads an image here, whenever they create a new job object, where is it that you would like for it to be saved? Now all images and files that are uploaded as part of models are going to be saved to one central directory, and we can specify the name of that, and I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a bit. But within that media folder, you can specify your own folders. And so for example, here, I think probably having a folder named like images is going to be a good idea. So I'm just going to type images with a / right after that. And that's saying, okay, inside of the media folder that we are going to create, anytime that someone uploads an image, it should go inside of this images folder. And Django does some really cool stuff to make sure that, for example, if two files are uploaded with the exact same name, it will rename one of them to be slightly off so that they can still both exist, but that the objects can still reference them. It does absolutely great job of that. Okay, so with this all in place, we're now ready to go ahead and save this to our database. And one thing that I want to mention here that we sort of just have put off the whole time that we've been in this course is you'll notice here that when we run the server, we get this big red error that says you have 14 unapplied migrations. Your project may not work properly until you apply the migrations, blah, 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 blah. So the way in Django to sort of update your database to let it know that you have new models that you want to be inside of there is by doing a migrate. So you might be wondering, well, how come we have this error here saying that we need to do a migrate before we create any models? Well, the admin and the auth and the content types, the sessions, these were basic apps that were already added to our project. These need or want to be added to the database. You can see we've been able to function quite a bit without them, but just again, think of migrations as a way to sort of set up your database. So first, I want to go ahead and apply these migrations that we have here. And what's really awesome, it tells us exactly what we need to do. We just need to say Python manage.py migrate. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Control-C to close out of running the server. And I'm going to do just as it says above. I'm going to say Python manage.py and then migrate, just like that. And you can see it's doing all these things. This is essentially getting the database up to speed. But it still doesn't have any knowledge or idea about this job model that I've created. Now, in order for it to find this, what we need to do is run a special command here where we say Python manage.py and then make migrations. Make migrations, just like that. Okay, so go ahead and hit enter on that. Oh, and it's telling us no change detected because I forgot we have to let Django know that we have something new that we want to be added. So in order to do this, we've got to go ahead and go to our main settings file. So let's open up the portfolio folder and let's go to our settings.py. So inside of here, basically what we're trying to do is tell Django that we have a new app inside of our project that it should know about. So if we scroll down here, one of the top things in the setting file is the installed apps. So you can see there's some stuff here like the .admin, .auth, sessions, messages, right? All of these were what were making those warnings of saying, hey, we need to do some migration. So these are some apps that are brought into our project by default. Feel free to delete these if you're not using them, but typically you're going to use most of the stuff in every project. That's why it's there by default. I don't think there's really much savings with getting rid of some of these apps, so I would keep these. But we want to add our own app in here. For example, jobs. We should let the settings file know about jobs. So we're going to add a new item to this list, one up at the top, so it's going to be a string. Make sure to add the comma at the end so this continues to be a full list here, and we just have to give the name of our class that we're adding here. And so for us, if we want to add the jobs, we're going to say jobs dot, and ultimately what it is that we're trying to add here is if we go into the jobs directory and down here to admin, or excuse me, apps, we want to add this class that was auto-generated for us called jobs config. So if we go back to our settings, we said jobs here, which takes us to this directory. Then we need to specify the apps by saying dot apps. And then we're going to say dot exactly the name that shows up here. So I would just recommend even copying and pasting this so you make sure that's not messed up at all. And that's all it's going to take for us to be able to add that. Now, one more thing to do while we're here in the settings file, this isn't directly connected with the database migrations and all that stuff, but we should tell our Django project where it should be saving our media files. And so we need to add two new variables here down at the bottom. So the first one that we're going to add is a media root. So just type in all caps media underscore root. And then we need to set this equal to some string. This is saying, when someone wants to save some sort of image, file, whatever it is, it should be happening inside of here. And basically, we want to go to whatever our project's base directory is and then have a media folder on top of that. So we could go do like sort of a path like this and mention that, but I really recommend if we scroll to the top here, you can see that we have some different examples of using like os.path.dir name and all this stuff. But we would just want to say something similar to that. Let's go down to the bottom. Here it is, where we set up our databases and it has this os.path.join base dir, whatever. So this was saying where it should save the database, and you can see there's that database.sqlite3. Let's just go ahead and copy exactly what's here, and we'll come down and paste that below. But rather than being db.sqlite3, we're going to say inside of here media and then a backslash. Actually, take off the backslash. Just looked at my notes. We don't want the backslash. It's hard to know sometimes whether or not you want that. But this says anytime someone's saving a file that's connected with the model, it should go inside of a new folder here at the same space where the db.sqlite is, and we're going to call that media. Now, there's nothing sort of magical about the name media, like that's what usually everyone uses, but you can rename that if you want, and it doesn't even have to be here in the project. You could save this on a completely separate directory inside of your server, like completely outside of the project, but I do recommend for what we're doing, just keeping it here inside of the project. And what's cool is when we did that git ignore, we said, don't take anything that's in the media file. So it's not like we're saving all these images into our project every time we're doing a git commit. All right, so that's the media root. Now we also need to specify one more variable, and that's the media underscore URL. So this says when someone's trying to access an image, where can they go do that? So we need to specify here that this should just be a string, and it's going to be /media/. Okay, so So simple enough here, it's going to say, so essentially what's happening here, if we go back to our models, we're saying we want to save images connected with a job to the images directory. So if someone creates a new job and it has an image connected with it, what's going to happen is it's going to go first to our media folder, and then it's going to make an images folder and save that image there. Now, if we want to access that image, we go to the name of our website /media, which we specified right here, /images /whatever the name of that file ends up being. And you might think, oh, this is like really complicated, but don't worry, Django handles this quite nicely. Okay, so with all of this in place, let's go back to our terminal, and I'm just going to hit the up arrow. We want to do that make migrations command again, so we'll go ahead and hit enter there, and look at that. It noticed that we had some changes. Now, it's going to get a little bit ornery with us because whenever you're working with images, we have to have some code installed called Pillow, and Pillow basically allows you to work with images in Python really easily. So before we do that, let's go ahead and do a pip install of Pillow, just like that. Go ahead and hit enter. All right, so now that we have Pillow in place, let's try again to make these migrations. So we go ahead and hit enter here, and look at that. It noticed that we had some new model here called job, and it says, you know what, I'm going to make a migration here, and a migration basically is a way to upgrade your database. And so it says, I'm going to create a model called job. And in fact, if you want to see what changes it's going to make to the database, just go ahead and look at this. It's saved this in jobs/migrations 001. So if we go back to our directory here, jobs migrations 001, check that out. Look, this has all the code that it's going to be telling the database. It's like, hey, make this new table called job, and it's going to have the following things in here. Image, summary, right? Those are the two things that we made. ID, we didn't specify ID, but ID is basically a way to identify uniquely each job that we have inside of the database, and that's something that's done for us automatically with the modeling code. So with all of that, now we have something to migrate. So we did our make migrations in order to generate that file there. And now if we say python manage.py and migrate, just like we did before, we hit enter, boom, look at that. It says I'm applying this new migration called jobs.001 initial, and everything there was okay. And it's saying, hey, I've already done these other ones. Those are all good to go. And you'll see if we try and migrate now, it says no migrations to apply. We're all up to date. And what's really cool about this is if we ever, make some changes to our database, like we wanted to add a new file, whatever, right? We could simply just go to our models and, for example, let's say I want to change the name of image to image fun or something like that. So I save this file. If I go do the make migrations, it's going to say, hey, are you sure? Do you want to rename that file? And I'll say, yes, that's what I'm trying to do. So it made a migration for that. And if I go ahead and run migrate, it'll update the database. So now that property, rather than being image, is going to be image fun. But that's probably not what we want. So we could either delete this migration, or we could just go back to this model and say, you know what, I actually want it to be named image. Save this. I'm going to make migrations. It says, are you trying to rename this? Yes, I am. And then I'm going to migrate it. Boom, we're back to where we started. Okay. So this is a great place to stop here. In the next one, we're going to talk about how we can use the admin interface to go ahead and look at these new job objects that we should be able to put inside of our database. I know this was kind of a lot, so that's why I'm capping it here. But hopefully now you understand more about how models work. You'll really understand once we get them showing up on our website, but let's keep moving forward.